representing landowners, community members, nonprofits, and interest groups united to stop the Bakken pipeline. So from students fighting for their schools to divest from fossil fuels, to grannies taking a stand for the futures of their children and grandchildren, physicians that recognize how this pipeline will negatively impact our health, to landowners directly in the pipeline path. We all know that this pipeline is all risk and no reward for Iowa. That brings us to the pending legislation, Senate File 506. It'll put in stronger protections for landowners, including the fact that Energy Transfer Partners would be forced to get 75% voluntary easements prior to being able to use eminent domain. Right now, they're at somewhere between 10 to 15% only. So we really need to fight for these protections for landowners, whether it's on the basis of eminent domain or legal fees when eminent domain is enacted, if it's enacted. It's great legislation, and there's a lot of urgency behind it because Energy Transfer Partners is claiming that they're going to build this pipeline before the end of the year. While we know that that isn't true, we may not have time until next session to get this passed. So we need to get this done soon, and we need Senator Gronstal to bring it to a vote before the session is out. So moving forward, we're going to have a handful of landowners speak and other representatives of the coalition. The first up is Kathy Holderfer.
Hi, I'm Kathy Holderfer from Mingo in Jasper County, the county through which more miles of pipeline would be laid than any other Iowa county, and in which materials for the pipeline are already being stockpiled. Presuming, obviously, that, or the company is presuming, obviously, that this is a done deal for them, that they'll have carte blanche to move forward. When I first received certified mail stating that I was on the proposed pipeline for this project, my first reaction was not about my property or my rights. My first reaction was about, is this good for Iowa? Is this good for our greater national interests? So I set about to learn as much as I could about the oil company, the possible damage to Iowa from an oil spill or other incident, and about the Bakken oil fields themselves. Something I want you to know about me is that I am very pro-eminent domain. This is not an anti-eminent domain statement. In fact, a couple of years ago, I declared eminent domain on my own body. I heard about a guy in Waterloo who needed a kidney, and I let him have one of mine. So I just want to say, that's not making me out as some kind of a hero. Iowans are like that. Iowans are nice. Iowans do what's best for others in their community. And Iowans make their decisions based on good information. In fact, when I was going through the process for the donation of my kidney, the hospital I worked with would not even have allowed me to do it if it had posed any undue harm for me. They were very concerned about my well-being. I feel like the use of eminent domain for an issue like this Bakken pipeline is the opposite of that. I have researched as much as I could, and I have found very little evidence of good for Iowa, only evidence of good for the oil industry and the oil company and the pipeline company. So I feel like we're in new territory with this type of pipeline possibly coming through Iowa. And the rules need to get up to speed with what we're looking at. There's never been anything like this proposed for Iowa before, and the landowners that would be affected need to be not just informed, but involved and consenting before something like this takes place. So I do urge Senator Gronstal to bring Senate File 560 up for a vote as soon as possible before permanent damage is done. Thank you. And the next speaker is Dan Gannon, also from Mingo.
Thank you, Kathy and Nathan. I want to thank you for being here this morning. My name is Dan Gannon. I'm president of Portland Farm Inc., which is a farm located just west of Mingo and southwest, right next to where Kathy lives in Jasper County. I'm the president, and I'm representing all the shareholders for Portland Farm Inc. Our farm, and I think this is important, is an Iowa Century farm which has been owned by our family for over 4 generations. We have been great stewards of the land, and all landowners, I feel, have a responsibility to take care of that land and leave it in the condition to be passed on to future generations. Placing a pipeline through our beautiful and well-maintained farmland that gives us a specific way of life as farmers completely destroys the whole definition of land stewardship. We are asking for Senator Grönståhl and the legislature's support of Senate File 506, as already discussed by Kathy and Nathan, to ensure that there are better protections for us landowners in place as the permitting process for the Bakken pipeline unfolds. This bill hopefully gives us some protections against the use of eminent domain by a for-profit corporation. Due to the limited time that I have been told that I have, I will not discuss which everyone has already discussed about Senate File 506, but my focus is on the constitutional rights of us private landowners. My feelings go beyond the eminent domain. They go back to my great-grandfather who settled the land that we farm, and our right to own property and the raising of our families without the interference of a private, out-of-state corporation that is here to make huge profits from us by accessing our land in a way that they possibly can for their own gain, with nothing to be gained by the public and no gain to us as farmers and private landowners in the state of Iowa. They talk about fair compensation. The compensation isn't fair when they only want to give all of us a very small token of money to destroy our land. Just Google the information on transportation costs. Just do that, and you'll find out how much they really save, which is truly profit for them and nothing for us. You'll find out in just simple Google that they will save $5 a barrel by placing the oil underground versus putting it on rail. And think of this, take $5 a barrel times 570,000 barrels of oil a day that will pass through Iowa, and do the math. Where is the compensation? Our family corporation filed an objection through the IUB, or the Iowa Utilities Board, and that was one of our objections. Other objections were we were never afforded the chance to be part of the initial information meetings. They had our address wrong. After making numerous calls, I was able to contact the Bakken Oil folks, and we did have a meeting with them giving us their proposal, which had many errors relating to our property. In other words, they didn't even have our property properly identified. The value they were proposing for our value of our land was an insult, was considerably below the true value of the land. The damage to our farmland will be for years, versus their feelings of only 3 years of damage that they say. The damage isn't just compaction. The bigger damage is to the ecosystem below the surface, which takes years to recoup, as demonstrated by farm terraces that were put into throughout Iowa farmland 40 to 50 years ago. To this day, most of them have never recouped the losses of those terraces. A placement of a pipeline diagonally for approximately 3/4 of a mile through 220 acres of prime farmland will completely change its use and value to us. The value would be in the ability, if we ever wanted to sell, versus a farm value next door that would not have a pipeline through it. We are very close to a town, which could afford us maybe in the future to develop that farmland into a residential community, but with the pipeline, that is out of the question. Due to the lack of time, I have not even brought up the most severe damage to all of us that live in that community, and I think Kathy alluded to it, and that's an oil leak. And believe me, they have oil leaks. In conclusion, I have mentioned some compensatable issues to demonstrate what that they do not tell us, but we know, and they surely are not asking those questions to bring that out. They simply do not want to hear what we have to say. Because of that, our impression from them, they truly do not care about the damage they do to Iowa farmland and our personal rights as landowners. they easily demonstrated to me they only care about their profits. Again, we are asking for Senator Gronstal and the legislature's support of the passage of Senate File 506 to ensure that there are better protections for landowners in place as the permitting process for the back-end pipeline unfolds. This bill hopefully gives them some protections against the use of eminent domain by a for-profit corporation. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Joe Ryder. I have a farm in Boone County. Thank you for all coming today. Appreciate your interest in this. Our family farm was settled in 1940 by my parents, who just came out of the Great Depression. And I've taken special efforts to really take care of it. We use cover crops. We have filter strips on our creek, and I'm in that mile-wide swath of pipeline. Right now I'm about 300 feet away from it. I don't know. It moves all the time, so I may have this thing going right through my property. But I have a big problem with this company. This is Dakota Access Pipeline. Number one, there was a recent scandal in Iowa, I believe. I don't know how many people have heard of this. The landowner was offered services of a prostitute for signing. Would you remember the movie, or rather the TV series Dallas? You remember J.R. Ewing? Well, he had one episode where he does exactly that. And this was, of course, fiction on Dallas. But these people have taken fictions and tried to turn it into reality. And they ask you, where's their moral compass? What's wrong with these people? Now, the second point I have is the standards of construction and inspection for these pipelines in the United States today. For example, in Indiana, at a natural gas pumping station, an inspector was found cheating in welding inspections. He had one good inspection, an x-ray, and he tried to apply it to like 4 or 5 others. And he went to federal court, and all he got out of it was 40 hours of community service and 2 years of probation. Now remember, in San Bruno, California, the big gas line that blew up, that was a bad well. Hadn't been inspected properly. This guy's doing something that could have killed someone, and all he gets is 40 hours of community service. Okay, the next point is supposedly creating jobs in Iowa. Well, now we've had a bunch of surveyors running through the state here. So far, I haven't found anyone who has identified a surveyor crew or firm from Iowa. So I called the pipeline people here in Urbandale, and this is what they told me. I couldn't believe it. They said, well, we signed these contracts a long time ago, and all these people were hired, so that's why we can't hire Iowans. Now I ask you, where are those so-called jobs for Iowans? I rest my case.
My name is Arlene Bates. I live in Ankeny, but I have farm ground in southern Story County. And my concern today is basically eminent domain. A northern natural gas line supplying the communities of Cambridge and Huxley, true transmission lines, one Des Moines to Fort Dodge, the other one Ankeny to Ames, and Interstate 35 have either taken our land or have easements to go across our farms. The common denominator is that each has benefited our state, our community, and we have benefited also. Neither the Dakota Access Line will ever fill any portion of these benefits. In David Cruz's eminent domain commentary on May 6, 2015, I quote, "Private enterprise, however, is private enterprise, and why should one commercial entity be able to usurp the rights of private individuals using a public power such as eminent domain power. With the Des Moines Register's poll of March 2nd, 2015, stating that 74% of Iowans condemn eminent domain, I feel that if the poll would be taken now, it would be even higher. With 74% of Iowans basically backing Senate File 506, it needs to be brought up for a vote. Yes, there is an eminent domain law in place, but the Iowa Utilities Board does not have to interpret it to the benefit of Iowans. They could follow the way our governor wants the existing eminent domain law to be interpreted, his way. Should we be letting a few people decide the future of our state by not allowing the Senate File 506 to come to the Senate debate floor for a vote? Aren't we still living in a democracy and not a dictatorship? Why do you want to give private business more power than me for my own property? Why should our property in Iowa, if you allow anyone to take it away from us? Thank you.
I'm Dick Lamb. I'm from Iowa City. My wife Judy is with me. We are farm owners. Our farm is just west of Ames, Iowa, at the point the pipeline would cross US 30. I would add that we are both natives to Iowa. We've lived here all our lives except for brief service in the military in Vietnam, both of us in the Vietnam War. And we pay taxes all these years. Our farm pays taxes. And I would just like to contrast that with the situation with the pipeline builders. They have never done anything for Iowa. They don't pay taxes in Iowa. And at this point, they aren't even promising to do anything for Iowa. All they want is to build this pipeline across the entire state and reap the profits from it. I find it absurd, and I'd like you to ponder this case, that we're here begging, pleading, trying to persuade our policymakers to allow us to keep our own property, to keep it from being snatched by a corporation that has done nothing for Iowa and won't do anything for Iowa. My reaction to our government, frankly, at this point, I can best state as disappointed. I'd like everyone to consider that we may be the first to go here. If eminent domain can be used for a private corporation to grab people's land for no other purpose than to make a profit for that corporation, I think more people are in danger than what we see right here today. I urge you to keep this in the public eye, to contact your legislators, to do everything we can. If there is enough attention, we can win over the powerful influence and money of the oil industry and the pipeline builders. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Jonas Magrum, and I am with the Bakken Pipeline Resistance Coalition. Eminent domain is an extraordinary power of government that strips landowners of one of our nation's most sacred rights. It should be used only in the rarest of circumstances, where the public good far, far outweighs this precious individual right. The Bakken Pipeline does not come remotely close to meeting this high standard. Yet under current Iowa law, a three-person panel that necessarily reflects the politics of the governor can grant Dakota Access this abusive power for private gain. It is up to our state legislators to close this dangerous and abusive loophole. From our perspective, The 75% voluntary landowner participation this bill would require is a low bar in the case of the Bakken Pipeline. Under SF 506, 25% of landowners could still be involuntarily stripped of their rights for the enrichment of a private venture that offers the people of our state almost nothing in return. On behalf of all landowners affected by the proposed Bakken Pipeline and all Iowans, we call upon Senator Gronstal to bring this bill to a vote, and upon our legislators in whom we have placed our sacred trust to fulfill that trust and pass SF 506 without delay. Now we'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Again, thank you for coming.
Are there any questions or? Okay, thank you everybody.
Well, that is only a small representation of the Bakken Pipeline Resistance Coalition. There are other groups. Pretty good?
Nice to see you. Thank you
Yep.
for coming. Oh, okay. That's
And other organizations and environmental organizations. There are smaller groups. The Des Moines Catholic Worker Community is on board. Occupy the World Food Prize, of which I am a member. We are on board with this, trying to stop the pipeline, and just individual citizens have chosen to protect the land that is the pride of the state. You know, agriculture is the pride of the state, and by running a pipeline through it that would carry fracked oil and who knows what else mixed in with it across the state without any chance of Iowans seeing benefit from one drop of that, that's just not cool. And that's why this coalition exists. That's why we have decided to take several actions, including former legislator and environmental activist and occupier Ed Fallon committed civil disobedience on Monday by going into the governor's office with a couple other people and